I figured out the next arc for every unstable protagonist and figured out how each one ends. And the last arc I uncovered might genuinely be the most exciting thing we've seen on the server. Let's start with Frags. Out of all the protagonists, Frags leans hardest into PvP driven content. He recently went on a training arc and his final battle was against the God of War, and in my opinion it carries the most narrative weight of all the training arc videos. It frames the God of War concept as how Flame might appear to the outside world, and more specifically a younger version of himself. That gives it more than enough material to build a future arc around. Something comparable to the Flame vs Wemmbu rivalry. I'm confident this arc will happen, but as we saw near the end of Flame's last video, there's a heavily cinematic closing sequence where Flame becomes increasingly protective of Ilomadi, finally coming to terms with the fact that Lettuce was right. He does need to change. And that's what makes it so significant. Because if Flame, once the most feared player on the server, can turn towards something better, that strips every other player of their excuse not to do the same, which makes Flame's next arc an almost certainly a redemption story. But what does that actually look like in practice? To figure that out, we need to understand the full scope of who he's hurt, and the list is concerningly long. Between Lettuce damaging his reputation through the thousands of players he and Wemmbu killed together, and the 2,500 additional players killed at the end of the lore arc, the entire server has a distorted view of Flame and his motives. And it gets even worse. Flame was a Diamond Eye trim player during the Mafia. That doesn't happen by accident, and I'm pretty sure he committed several war crimes to get to that rank, like of course holding 8chan hostage. That said, with Parrot now in a position of power, the conditions for a redemption might be better than ever. Parrot's view of Flames mirrors how Lettuce once saw him, which could push them toward either conflict or, more interestingly, collaboration. Whether that means working together to improve the state of the server, or pushing back against rising bandit groups. A Parrot and Flame alliance feels like a real possibility. Now that we have covered Flame, it's time to move on to our next protagonist, Parrot. Now, what's next for Parrot? His next arc as a king is basically a given based on how his last video ended. But what happens inside that arc is far more complicated than it seems. The opening episode is easy enough to predict. You'll put in place rules similar to Lettuce's, driven by a desire to lower crime and support newer players, probably by supplying them with gear when they first join, something like what happened with the treasure arc. The problem is, it won't be that straightforward. The server is still severely depleted from the Invis Mafia's reign. Resources like Netherite and maces barely exist anymore. That means Parrot is heading straight toward failure as king, because without anything to actually give new players, he can't deliver on what he promised during the election.
I think there's a massive issue on this server that needs to be addressed. Out of all the players that spawn in on this server, 90% of them don't even make it out of spawn.
We already saw Lore struggle with this, unable to fully outfit all their members in Netherite armor, even at their peak, and even the ones in Diamond armor had it enchanted with protection too. For Parrot, the consequences would be worse. Players who believed in him will feel misled and might turn against him, in the process losing his most trusted allies, and it will damage his reputation in ways that lump him in alongside Ashswag and Lettuce, a bad ruler of the server and one that should be disposed of. Not exactly the legacy he's aiming for. But Parrot won't go down without a fight, and using the same strategy I mentioned at the start, I found out exactly how he plans to address this, though it comes with serious risks. In Parrot's final Tomb of the Minecraft Mafia video, the production is noticeably more cinematic than his usual content, and as we've established, that's already a signal that something is coming back. Here's how it all connects to the King's arc. Marlowe may eventually reveal the server's best kept secret that the stasis chambers were never actually destroyed. And that ties directly into Parrot's resource crisis, because the one place that still holds pre-Mafia levels of wealth is the Mafia tomb. Accessing those resources would trigger the deaths of tens of thousands of players who were once Invis Mafia members. It becomes a genuine moral dilemma, sacrifice a small number to sustain hundreds of thousands. We can't know for certain what choice Parrot will make, but realistically the plot probably won't let him take the clean route. He'll try to disarm the system and fail, leaving him with the same fate that happened to Ashswag and Lettuce. He will become a tyrant. Now, what about Wemmbu? Wembu's style is completely different from everyone else's. The reason is simple: variety. He's not just a PvP specialist like Flame or a strategist like Parrot. He does everything. That means his arc needs to reflect the same range, just like every arc before it. That's why Wembu's next arc is going to revolve around the underworld, but not in the way you might expect. Even confirming that Wemmbu will most likely explore the underworld is his most recent video. I explored the world's largest Minecraft server, where he meets a full Invis Netherite player with blue trims. Some people suspect this may be Jamato P, but we're not really sure, but I think that it could definitely be of relevance to Wembu's story. So what would an underworld arc actually involve? We know the gold block plays a role, but that alone doesn't explain the scope of what the underworld can do. What we do know from Wembu's video is that underworld troops can break blocks, something a regular player entering that dimension cannot do. And there's potentially more. Whether the gold block can revive dead players, grant godlike abilities, or simply allow the people down there to destroy blocks in the void, that will likely be what the arc eventually uncovers. There's also the question of Jamato instantly passing through the nether portal, something that should only be possible in creative mode. However, we do know through Spoke's video that Jamato has a lot of exploits, and with him knowing about the underworld, there definitely is something hidden there. The ending of the arc will most likely center on revealing the true powers of the underworld and finding a purpose for them. The exact reason those powers matter is probably something only the arc itself can answer. And with that done, we can now move on to our final protagonist, Spoke. His next arc is fairly clear on its own, but what follows after that is where things get genuinely fascinating. So let's start with the immediate next arc first. Over the course of his recent videos, Spoke has been sliding further and further toward villainy, just like Astrag predicted. He's been ignoring the people around him who try to keep him grounded, going so far as killing Leo Wook, all while convincing himself he was still in the right. Refusing to accept any blame, even denying that he killed the spies while knowing Leo was about to die. That's what makes this so certain. Villains aren't people who believe they're evil, they're people who genuinely believe they're doing good. We saw the exact same logic with both Astrag and Lettuce, each one convinced that their version of control was what the server needed. Spoke is following that exact same path, which is why he's going to be the next villain. The Unstable SMP storyline has been dropping hints about this for a long time. That's how they keep everyone engaged. It's been over a year since Ash first predicted Spoke would turn, and Ash didn't build his empire purely through ambition. He could read people. His read on Spoke at the very end wasn't a throwaway moment. But Ash's return changes everything. When Spoke chose not to kill him, telling him to disappear, Ash ended up in the Farlands. And as we know, the Farlands hold powers that go far beyond the surface level, potentially even connecting to the underworld through the Soulkeeper portals. So if Ash comes back, it won't just be a one person returning with a single guard, it will be something much larger. Forces that operate on a level most players can't even comprehend. And there's a real chance he's already back. And here are the 3 core reasons I believe the Mafia is returning, and ending with why it may have already happened. Firstly, the simplest reason. Ash promised to return the moment Spoke became a villain. As we've just established, that moment is arriving, and Ash wouldn't come back alone. He knows firsthand that bringing down someone as powerful as Spoke requires an army, which means he's likely rebuilding or restarting the Mafia from scratch. 2. The sudden reappearance of Netherite armor. Every protagonist at some point told us Netherite was effectively gone, rare, nearly impossible to find, completely drained after the Mafia took everything. And yet Lettuce somehow managed to fully gear 2,000 players in Netherite armor. So where did it come from? The one faction we know still has stockpiles is the Invis Mafia, but Shirk was back again to the tomb. 3. Lettuce was holding Jumper's spies inside the Mafia prison. That could just mean they repurposed another location, but stories don't include details like that without intention. It plants the idea in the back of the viewer's mind for a reason. There is no narrative need to make it a Mafia outpost specifically, unless the Invis Mafia is meant to stay present in the viewer's awareness. And on top of that, while the Mafia had many outposts, that particular one had never appeared before, tucked away in the valley with an unusually concealed setup, which raises the question, has the Mafia already returned and we just haven't recognized it yet? But that is all from my predictions regarding all the protagonists. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing and make sure to check out the next video as I'm sure you will enjoy it.